All right, so welcome everybody to the Water Relief Podcast on the Fish on First Podcast Network. I'm your host, Noah Berger. We are back with a whole new season. We will chat with Marlins relievers and hopefully relievers from other organizations. Stay tuned for that in the near future. I'm very happy to welcome one of the newest members of the Marlins bullpen, 32-year-old veteran right-hander from Danbury, Connecticut. He was acquired from the Boston Red Sox in exchange for friend of the pod, Richard Blyer, on January 30th. Ladies and gentlemen, please say hello to Matt Barnes. Matt Barnes, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
I am doing amazing. Let's start with the trade.
Okay.
What was your reaction? How did you get the news, and what were your expectations coming into the season?
On the actual trade?
Yeah.
So, I was actually at an airport in Las Vegas on my way back home. We were sitting in one of the lounges. Our flight was delayed for 5 hours. So we were sitting there grabbing a bite to eat and got a phone call that said I was being traded to the Marlins.
So what was your initial reaction?
I was like, it's awesome. Honestly, like when you get into the process of being DFA'd, you really have no control over where you go, right? It's just kind of up to the team where they can strike a deal or a trade or something like that. And if they can't, then you go into the free agency process, which then you can kind of pick and choose and start negotiating with teams again. But in that process, you're kind of just waiting. And when I got the news that I was going to Miami, I looked at my wife and I was like, honestly, like that's awesome. Like we were pumped. I was like, that's a great landing spot for us, especially being on the East Coast. Always, played in the East Coast, from the East Coast. Being able to stay here, frankly, in the same time zone is awesome for us. I'm very familiar with Florida. I've been to Miami a number of times. Knew that the team had some really fun, exciting talent, and was honestly really, really pumped about it.
So, in your time here already, is there any big good spots that you've started to like in Miami specifically to hang out?
I don't do a lot. My wife and I have gone out to dinner a handful of times. We went to Carbone when we first got here, and that was delicious. Went to Komodo the other night, and that was great as well. Like I said, I don't do a whole lot when I'm away from the field. I'm usually at the apartment, kind of hanging out. But I've been to Miami a number of times and kind of enjoyed the nightlife scene here before. Has spent time on South Beach, whether it was for a wedding or vacation or stuff like that. So it's fun here.
So, coming from Boston, what differences have you found between Boston and Miami with terms of like the clubhouse, the culture, and just the general vibe?
I was going to say first, if you didn't follow that up with that, I was going to say, well, first and foremost, the weather. And I tell you what, man, you don't appreciate playing under a roof until you have one. Man, is it nice. We came back from that road trip and we had the delay and the cancel and this and that. I was like, can we just get home to a 72 and comfortable every game? But in terms of the clubhouse and the vibe, it's really nice here. I feel like it's a little more relaxed in a sense here than it is in Boston. In Boston, it's it can be very stressful at times. I mean, it's a tough city to play in. When you're winning, it's great. When you're losing, it's hard. I mean, just plain and simple, right? And you're held to an incredibly high standard from the entire city, right? It's not just an organizational thing; it's a city thing. The clubhouse here, I think it's awesome. I touched on it 2 seconds ago, but you look around and the pieces and the talent and the direction that the club is going, and I think it starts from the top down. It starts from some of the moves that were made in the off season. It continues with Skip and the staff and the guys in the clubhouse, and I think that we're a month through the season right now. There have been a couple of stretches in which I don't think we were happy with the way that we played, but I think when you look at the overall product of what we put together the first month, I thought it was a pretty quality month of baseball. Got 5 months left until the postseason, and obviously plenty of areas in which we can improve on, right? I mean, it doesn't stop. So I'm excited moving forward, and I think that we can do something cool here.
I gotta just mention, you are very good at this. You're making my job very easy. So, came from Fenway Park. It's a very hitter-friendly park. It's got the different. You mentioned the weather.
Yep.
And now you're in the roof and everything. It's a more of a pitcher-friendly park. How much has that change helped you?
The biggest thing for me is I don't necessarily focus on the dimensions of whether or not it's a hitter's or a pitcher's park. The nicest part here for me is knowing the consistency of what a baseball will feel like in my hand every day. When you're playing in outdoor stadiums with no roof, you're going to have a day where it's 45. You're going to have a day where it's drizzling. Some days it's hot. Some days it's cold, right? And that affects the texture and the way that the ball feels in your hand. Like the ball when we were in Cleveland felt different than Atlanta, which feels different than Miami, right? But every home game here, it feels the same because it's temperature controlled. And even in Boston, like we would have days where, I mean, the Northeast, they say if you don't like the weather, wait 15 minutes, right? We had days where it would be 45 or 35 one day and snowing, and the next day it's 76 and sunny, right? And those are just elements that you have to kind of deal with. And the interesting part to me is a lot of people say that Fenway's a hitter-friendly park, right? But like, I don't know that it completely is, right? So like the Monster, yes, obviously, because it's short, right? The fence is short there, and you have pesky pole, right? But pesky pole is only like a 5-foot stretch, right? When you get out to deep right field, which is like probably 10 feet in off the foul line,
it's one of the deepest parks in the league.
I don't know that there's a park deeper to right field, right? So you have that until you get to probably where the Monster ends, because it's still a 20-foot wall there.
Yeah.
Like that entire section of the field is really big, right? And the way that I look at it, the Monster, to me, it gives and it takes just equally, right? You get a high pop-up that's hit 365 feet, it's probably a home run. But you get a ball that's hit 114 that would go 470 feet, well, it hits off the top of the wall and it's probably a single. So, like, you get a hit out of it, but
not as many bases.
Right, but the damage is reduced because of that.
So, along those same lines, you've pitched in almost every active Major League ballpark.
One more, and we get it
including
in.
special parks like that in London.
Yep.
There are only 2 parks that you haven't pitched in. Do you know what
the big leagues?
Yeah, I'm gonna put you on the spot.
But I haven't pitched. There's only one park I haven't been to.
Which one is that?
Wrigley.
Do you know the other one that you haven't pitched in?
It's none out west.
Is it?
I've pitched in Arizona, Colorado, San Diego, Anaheim, LA, San Fran. I warmed up in San Francisco. I didn't pitch.
Pitched in San Francisco.
I warmed up in San Francisco. I never pitched in San Francisco.
You have not.
I warmed up there. That's right. Now that I think about it.
So you guys are going to Wrigley this weekend.
Yep.
How much are you looking forward to checking off the ballpark off your list and pitching in the friendly confines?
Oh, I mean, it's awesome. I've had like 29 of them for like 3 years now, right? And the Red Sox actually went to Wrigley twice in the last 2 years. And 1 year I think I had COVID and 1 I was hurt. So I didn't get to do it. And it doesn't happen very often, right? And this is before I was traded to the Marlins and got into the National League. So super excited. I've heard it's an awesome ballpark, great experience. Obviously, that's the second oldest, right, behind Fenway. So I'm excited to see what it's like. I mean, it's fun. You know, you kind of get these routines and, like, you know where to go and what to do in clubhouses, where, like, the staff and everything. Like, I know nothing. I know nothing about Wrigley. So it's crazy that this far into my career I get to the point where I get to experience a park for the first time. But I also think it's really cool to get all 30 parks. And I think it's going to be a lot easier now for guys to do it because of the way that the schedule is built where you play everybody. But for the first 9 years of my career, like, you didn't do that. Like, I played with guys who it was hard to get all 30 because even if you played, right, because you rotated the West, the East, and the Central every year, and even in that, you wouldn't travel to each park. So you would probably have to be in the league for like 7 or 8 years at least just to have the chance to do it. So I still
take 2 years if you're in the league for the whole
right. So I'm at the point where, like, I hold it maybe to a different standard because of that than what it'll be worth. I don't know, in 3 or 4 years. But for me, it's cool.
Yeah, it'll actually be my first time at Wrigley too this weekend. So this is my favorite question. I love asking relief pitchers. What is your ideal bullpen setup? There's different ballparks, like in Tampa, it's completely exposed.
It's not Tampa.
It's never Tampa.
It's not Oakland.
For Wrigley, it's underneath, completely enclosed.
Yep.
And for other ballparks like here, it's kind of exposed, and But like Philly, you're right up next to the fans, and now in Toronto, you're right up next to the fans. What's your favorite bullpen?
That's right.
setting?
Toronto changed theirs.
Yeah.
I saw videos of it. That's interesting. Did we go to Toronto this year?
No,
they
Toronto
come to
comes
us.
here.
Okay. Ideal, honestly. Our bullpen setup here is really nice, and I think a lot of that has to do with the roof. Right, we're never going to be exposed to bad elements. And an open stadium, like the Yankees one, is really nice. I think Atlanta's is nice. There's only a handful of things that we really need. Like, I like to have a clear, unobstructed view of the game, right? So Atlanta or New York, you can sit up on the benches and see over the fences and watch. I think that's really nice. So we're not staring through chain link fences the whole time.
Here, there's like a screen in front of the bullpen. You guys,
yeah,
but they have the
but we have the
balcony,
thing,
right?
so you can sit up on top and see over the fences, right? I like to have enough space where like guys can throw comfortably, and we have plenty of room to move around and get loose. And in these open stadiums, the biggest one for me is having a climate-controlled room, because it's either going to be, you don't know what you're going to deal with that day, right? A lot of these places don't have it. Like Fenway, we just had a single bench, and it's small. So whether it's, and the bathroom is like no bigger than like this table, right? But it is what it is. It's what we had. So when it's cold out, you're freezing because you're exposed to it. When it's hot out, the sun sets right over the third base line, and you get torched with the sun. So, like the Yankees has a really nice climate-controlled room that you're in there with the TVs and you can watch. I mean, it's the high home now, but
oh, really? They changed that?
Yeah, I think so.
Probably because like a sign stealing thing.
Yeah, which you can't do anyways anymore because you have PitchCom. So,
how have you liked PitchCom?
I love it.
So, as a relief pitcher, you rarely come into the game with a clean and manicured mound. I noticed during one of your recent appearances, it looked like you were extremely uncomfortable with your your landing spot on the mound. How much does that affect your delivery, and how have you learned to adapt to different conditions of the mound?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's hard. Like, take Atlanta, for example, right? One, mechanically, I was off a little bit anyways, right? But I go out there, we just had a rain delay. Obviously, everything's wet. The first pitch of the inning, the first pitch, my front foot slips and slides. Now, for me, that's always losing my front foot for any pitcher is obviously very hard. For me, it like subconsciously triggers something. So in 18, I got hurt because my landing foot landed awkwardly and slipped, and then I missed 3 weeks because of a hip injury. So whenever I start losing my front foot because I slip, it like subconsciously makes me even more tentative because that's how I hurt myself.
Interesting.
But right, so
have you ever asked for the grounds crew to come out and fix a mound?
Yes, once in New York. Was
there any thought to doing it last week?
No, because after that first one, it didn't really happen again, and then it happened a couple times in the second inning. And I don't know, it was hard. I mean, most of it was truthfully mechanical, which I was able to fix. You know, we came back here, and something so subtle and so dumb, but was able to fix it and have since thrown the ball better. I didn't really think about it, honestly. Maybe I should have, but I know hindsight's 20/20, right? But it's difficult, you know. You're kind of dealt the hand that you are with the mound, which is why anytime I'm warming up, like I don't want anybody to fix mounds for me before I get on them. Like, leave them nasty. That's the only mound I'm going to see. I feel more uncomfortable on a clean mound than I do on a dirty mound. But really, as long as the landing spot's okay and solid, I'm good. Like, if we've got a big hole, I'm okay adjusting where I am on the rubber to fix that. But most of the time, it's fine. I mean, they do a good job of keeping the mounds well kept and manicured and the clay and everything. So it's very rarely that you run into like a big issue with a mound.
So now into the nitty gritty.
Yep.
A pitch you're using a lot less this year is the changeup. You used it a little in 2022.
Yep.
But basically gotten rid of it in 2023. Yep. Is there any reason why?
Not necessarily. So it's not a changeup anymore, and that's probably part of the reason. In spring training, we were throwing the changeup in spring training, and it was okay. It was fine, but it's not like a big swing and miss pitch for me. It's just kind of like a strike, get back in the count. Occasionally, I can get some swing and miss on it or weak contact with it, right? And I was talking with Mel about it, and he was like, listen, the innings that you're going to be throwing, he was like, you don't need to like get back in counts, right? He's more like, you want swing and miss with all your stuff, right? If you're throwing late and close or tight games or whatever, you're trying to keep away as a reliever, he's like, you want swing and miss stuff. So I said, all right, well, I used to throw the splitter, and he was like, so we ended up going back to a splitter. So it's not a changeup, it's a splitter now. And I didn't throw it a ton in spring training. And the first time I actually threw it in the game in like 4 years was in New York. Right? I threw the first one to McNeil for a strike, and then I threw two to Lindor that were balls. I think it was it McNeil?
I don't think I was able to watch that game.
I think it was
on
McNeil.
Passover.
So, but it's because it's a splitter. So I haven't thrown it a ton, and the curveball is really good right now. So I get into these traps sometimes where if the fastball and the curveball are both working really well, I'm usually fine. Like I really don't have to use a third pitch.
So you're one of the few users of the Knucklecurve.
Yes.
Is there anyone that you used to watch that inspired you to use that pitch and that you try and emulate? What went into starting to use that pitch?
So when I was coming up through the minor leagues as a starter, my breaking ball was terrible. I was a fastball changeup guy. And I remember sitting out of the bucket one day in Double-A, and we were shagging, and it was me, Brandon Workman, and Anthony Renato. And Workman was like, have you ever tried spiking the curveball? And I was like, nope. So he had spiked it, and Renato spiked it. So from that day on, I spiked it and started messing around with it, and it felt much better. And I was like, that's interesting. So I stuck with the Knucklecurve then. And then for the rest of my career, when I first came up and once I got comfortable with it, the Knucklecurve was probably, it was like anywhere from like 77 to 80, maybe 81 and 82 with it on a good day. But it was kind of like loopy and slow and wasn't great. And I don't spin the ball a lot, right? I'm not a high spin guy. I think my curveball is like 1900 to 2100-ish, which is very low for a breaking ball. I mean, you got Charlie Morton spinning at like 3200, which
Charlie
is
Morton
insane.
is an anomaly.
Which is insane, right? But so then Kimbrel gets traded to the Red Sox, and he spikes his. And him and I were catch partners for 3 years. And I remember watching him. He's throwing this thing like 88. And I went to him and was like, bro, you got to teach me how to throw this thing at 87. I was like, it's incredible. It's unhittable. So I started working with Craig a little bit, and that's when it went from like 78 to 80 to 82 to 86.
So now I'm going to rapid fire questions before we wrap up. Funniest teammate?
Funniest teammate? I think Flo's really funny.
The team hype man?
It's probably Louis Arise.
Your favorite ballpark?
To play in or aesthetically?
Do both.
To play in? My favorite ballpark to pitch in is probably Baltimore. And that was even before they moved the wall back.
And your least favorite? The one aesthetically. Your favorite aesthetically?
Atlanta's a really nice ballpark. I know that Marlins fans probably don't want to hear that, but Atlanta's a really nice ballpark.
We acknowledge when we're beaten in something.
It's hard with some of the West Coast ones because I haven't been out there. The new Texas Stadium is sick.
Yeah, I really want to go out there and see that.
Minnesota Stadium is really nice, I think.
I've been told a lot that Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh is really cool. Yeah.
Especially the view from like the
Pittsburgh's.
The
I like.
bleachers.
I like
you see the skyline.
The skyline in the back. Pittsburgh's awesome. I think Lone Depot is really cool.
It's an underrated ballpark because of you don't really see many people here.
Right. But when you actually look at the ballpark, it's really nice.
It's really nice.
Yeah.
So your least favorite ballpark to pitch in?
To pitch in? And it's probably because I don't throw the ball well there historically, not because it's not a nice stadium. Probably Minnesota. I got bad numbers in Minnesota.
So, what's your favorite song?
I don't have a favorite song.
I feel that.
I don't know. I don't know that I have a favorite song. I listen to so many different genres and.
Who are you giving the aux to?
On the team?
Yeah. And the follow-up is, who are you not giving the aux to?
I think Jazz would probably do a really good job with it and understand, like, because certain times call for different music, right? I think Jazz would probably be pretty good at it. Look at what Jazz.
And who are you not giving the aux to?
Probably Tanner Scott.
All right. Well, this has been an incredible chat, and it's about time I let you go back and get ready for today's game.
Thank
Is
you.
there anything you want to add before we end off? A message for the fans, a shout out to your family, or anything?
No, I don't think so. Say to the fans, hey, we appreciate the support. Keep showing up. We're working hard, trying to win as many ball games as possible for you. So let's get out to Lone Depot, support the boys.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you very much for joining me. This has been the Water Relief Podcast on the Fish on First podcast channel. Thank you all for listening. We will be back in the very near future with another Marlins reliever. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.